A woman disappears into the woods behind a shopping center in South Carolina. 6 days later, they find her body less than 2 miles from where she was last seen alive. No bruises, no cuts, no gunshot wound, no sign that anyone ever touched her. And 3 weeks later, the coroner still cannot tell her family how she died. Not won't. Cannot. This is the case of Elena Katherine Moore. And before you decide what you think happened to her, I need you to sit with one fact that most true crime coverage of this case skips right past. Nobody official has accused anybody of anything. No suspect. No person of interest. No arrest. Just a 39-year-old woman. A gap in the timeline nobody can explain, and a body that isn't giving up its secrets easily. So let's go back to the beginning and build this the way the investigators had to, one confirmed fact at a time. A week before Elena Moore vanished, a neighbor's doorbell camera caught something strange. Elena, standing at a stranger's front door, appearing confused. In the footage, she's seen picking up a food delivery that isn't hers and trying to walk into a home that isn't hers. When the resident opened the door, she reportedly didn't seem to know what she was doing there. The neighbor who filmed it later told a local news station something that has stuck with everyone following this case since. Elena's confusion worried her. She found herself wondering, days later, whether that same disoriented state was what Elena was experiencing on the night she disappeared. That's the first piece of a puzzle that, right now, has no confirmed picture on the box. Thursday evening, June 11th, 2026. Elena signs in at a Planet Fitness on Whiteford Way in Lexington, South Carolina, at 6:40 p.m. She's a personal trainer. This gym is part of her regular routine. But according to investigators, on this particular visit, she doesn't work out. She reportedly showers. She's seen on camera holding a towel. Then she leaves, on foot, walking away from the gym, toward a wooded area behind a nearby Lowe's home improvement store. Nearly 3 hours pass. At 9:17 p.m., a camera captures her again. This time she's walking through a Publix parking lot on Old Cherokee Road, roughly half a mile away, wearing the same olive green hoodie and black athletic pants from the gym. She's walking in the direction of Old Cherokee Road, a stretch that, once you're past the shopping centers, has no streetlights. That is the last confirmed image anyone has of Elena Moore alive. Nearly 3 hours, half a mile. What was she doing in between? Where did those hours go? Nobody has answered that publicly. Not the police. Not the family. Nobody. The next morning, June 12th, Elena's husband reports her missing. Police say at that point they had no reason to suspect foul play and no indication she was in danger. It reads, on paper, like a routine missing persons case, the kind that resolves itself within a day or two. It didn't. On June 15th, 4 days after Elena was last seen, a coordinated search operation moves into the wooded area behind that same Lowe's. Multiple agencies. A visible law enforcement presence. Lexington's police chief would later describe it not as a recovery operation, but as an attempt to rule out one location where Elena could be. They ruled it out. No trace of her was found. Here's what makes that detail matter. The location where Elena's body was ultimately discovered 2 days later sits within roughly the same general area, not in some far-flung corner of the county, but close enough that it raises an honest question. How does a coordinated, multi-agency search, in daylight, come up empty in an area this close to where a body is later found? There are ordinary explanations for that. Dense summer tree canopy limiting visibility. Search patterns that didn't extend to the exact clearing. It happens. Searches miss things. But it's a gap in the story that remains open, and it's the kind of detail that keeps investigators, and now half the internet, looking twice at this timeline. On June 16th, police release new footage. Elena in that Publix parking lot at 9:17 p.m., walking toward Old Cherokee Road. The following afternoon, June 17th, acting on a tip, officers searched the wooded area near Lakeside Middle School, further down that same road. At 2:48 p.m., they find a body matching Elena's description. 2 days later, on June 19th, the Lexington County Coroner's Office makes it official. The body is Elena Katherine Moore. June 20th, Elena's body is transported over 100 miles to the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston, not the local county coroner's facility, but MUSC, one of the region's top forensic pathology centers. That decision alone tells you something about how this death is being treated. You don't send a body across the state for a routine natural death. 2 days later, on June 22nd, the coroner releases the preliminary findings, and here is where this case stops looking like anything ordinary. No bruising, no lacerations, no gunshot wounds, no stab wounds, no blunt force trauma, no strangulation, no external injury of any kind. A woman is dead, and her body shows no evidence that anything happened to her at all. The coroner's office is direct about what that means. The cause of death remains pending. Not determined. Not natural. Not accidental. Pending. Investigators order histological studies, examining tissue at the cellular level, a full toxicology screening, and a complete review of Elena's medical records. And then publicly, they ask for patience. Because this kind of pending doesn't resolve in a day. On July 1st, nearly 2 weeks after Elena's body was found, Lexington County Coroner Margaret Fisher spoke on the record about exactly why this case doesn't have an answer yet. Her explanation is worth hearing in full because it's the opposite of a cover-up. It's a description of how slow real forensic science actually is. She said that when a case like this comes in, there is no shortcut. The autopsy alone isn't the finish line. It's the starting point. From there, pathologists move into histology, examining tissue under a microscope. They run full toxicology. None of those processes move fast, and none of them can be rushed without risking the integrity of the result. She said final results in cases like this can take weeks, sometimes months, and that her office stays in constant contact with Elena's family throughout. That's not evasive. That's just what real forensic pathology looks like when a death doesn't explain itself on the surface. Strip away the speculation, and here's the woman at the center of this. Elena Katherine Moore, 39 years old. A personal trainer. Someone whose gym visits were part of a known, regular routine, which is exactly why her absence from that routine registered so quickly with the people around her. Friends who've spoken publicly describe a woman who, in her final weeks, did not seem like herself. Some have described her as paranoid or fearful in the period before she disappeared. One friend has said Elena told her, at a gathering not long before she vanished, that she was scared for her life. That statement, on its own, doesn't tell us what happened to her. Fear doesn't have a single cause, and grief has a way of reading meaning backward into every detail. But it's part of the record now, and it's part of why this case has refused to fade into a routine missing persons footnote. Here's where I want to be very careful because this is the part of the Elena Moore case where the internet has run far ahead of the facts. Elena's husband reported her missing. That's confirmed. He has not been named a person of interest. He has not been named a suspect. No charges have been filed against anyone. Investigators said early on they had no reason to suspect foul play. You will see videos, posts, and comment sections treating this as an open and shut domestic homicide, building elaborate theories about exactly how she died and who's responsible, sometimes citing forensic details that were never confirmed in any official report. Be skeptical of that content. A case with no cause of death, no manner of death, and no named suspect is a case where nobody outside that autopsy room actually knows what happened. Confident answers right now are guesses wearing a lab coat. What's real is simpler and, honestly, more unsettling. A woman who was seen looking confused and disoriented in the days before she vanished, a nearly 3-hour gap in her last known movements, a search that came up empty 2 days before her body was found nearby, and a full-body autopsy that found absolutely nothing on the surface to explain her death. When the coroner finally closes this out, the manner of death will be classified as one of 5 things: homicide, suicide, accident, natural causes, or undetermined. Each one sends a story in a completely different direction, and none of them can be ruled in or out yet. If it's natural causes, this becomes a genuine medical tragedy, A story about how a body can fail without warning and without a mark to show for it, and about how disorientation and confusion can sometimes be early signs of something going seriously wrong internally, long before anyone realizes it. If it's homicide, this becomes one of the most difficult categories of criminal case to build. One without a weapon, without visible trauma, resting entirely on toxicology, tissue evidence, and reconstructed timelines. If it's undetermined, this becomes a case that never really closes. Undetermined doesn't mean the investigation stops. It means it continues indefinitely, waiting for one more piece of evidence to tip the scale. Elena Moore's case has spread far outside Lexington County because it sits in a space true crime audiences find almost impossible to look away from. A body with no visible cause of death. No smoking gun. No obvious villain. Just a woman, a gap in the timeline, and a set of lab results the public is waiting on with real, sustained attention. That attention has already shaped this investigation. Community search efforts, public pressure, friends speaking on the record. All of it keeps a case like this from being quietly filed away. Whatever the coroner ultimately determines, this case is being watched closely enough that it will be very hard to bury. Of the tests still pending, toxicology is the one that carries the most weight, and it's worth understanding why. A toxicology panel doesn't just check for illegal drugs. It measures everything present in the blood, and in specimens like urine and the fluid inside the eye, which can hold chemical evidence longer than blood does after decomposition begins. It identifies not just what substances were present, but at what concentration, and concentration is often the difference between an unremarkable finding and a critical one. If Elena was on any prescribed medication, toxicology will show whether it was present at a normal, expected level, or at a level well outside what a doctor would have prescribed. That distinction alone can shift an entire case. And if anything unexpected turns up, something not accounted for by her known medical history, that becomes the thread investigators pull next. None of this means anything has been found. As of the coroner's most recent public statement, nothing has been confirmed either way. But it explains why this particular test, more than any other, is the one everyone is really waiting on. It's worth naming something directly because it's happened in almost every high-profile case like this one. When a woman disappears under unclear circumstances and is later found dead with no obvious cause, online true crime communities tend to reach for the same script: a controlling spouse, a hidden motive, a cover-up. Sometimes that instinct turns out to be right. Often it doesn't. That pattern isn't unique to this case, and it isn't evidence of anything by itself. Statistically, investigators do look closely at people close to the victim in any suspicious death. That's standard procedure, not an accusation. But procedure and proof are two very different things, and right now, this case has produced the first without anything close to the second. Elena's husband reported her missing, cooperated with the timeline police have released, and has not been named a suspect at any point in this investigation. Repeating unverified theories as if they were confirmed facts doesn't help find the truth. It just adds noise to a case that badly needs clarity, not volume. Right now, this is where the Elena Moore case stands: a preliminary autopsy that ruled out every obvious form of violence, and a coroner's office that has been honest enough to say, this is going to take time, and we are not going to guess. Somewhere in a lab in Charleston, slides of tissue are being read under a microscope. Toxicology samples are being run against a library of substances. Medical records are being cross-checked against everything investigators already know. And somewhere in Lexington, a family is waiting for one word: homicide, suicide, accident, natural, or undetermined, that will tell them, finally, what happened to Elena on the night she walked into the dark and never walked back out. We don't have that word yet. Nobody does. And anyone telling you otherwise right now is telling you a story, not the facts. We'll be following this case as the real findings come in. If there's an update, we'll cover it the same way we covered this one. What's actually confirmed, and nothing more.